Captain Jake Morrison stared at the swirling mess of stars outside his cargo ship's viewport and sighed. The kind of sigh that comes from a man who's made wrong turns in 3 different galaxies this month alone. Murphy, please tell me we're not lost again. Oh, we're definitely lost again, Captain, replied his ship's AI in a tone dripping with mechanical sarcasm. The good news is we've achieved a new personal record. We're now officially more lost than when you tried to deliver those singing crystals to the Andromeda sector and ended up in a black hole as gift shop. Jake rubbed his temples. His ship, the Lucky Break, was about as lucky as a lottery ticket bought during a solar storm. The name had been ironic when he'd bought her, and 5 years later it was practically prophetic in the worst possible way. Where are we exactly? According to my calculations, which are always correct, unlike your navigation skills, we're in the outer Cathera sector. You know, the one with all the warning beacons that say do not enter in 14 different languages? Oh, come on. Those signs are probably just suggestions like speed limits or expiration dates. Captain, one of those warning beacons is broadcasting a message that roughly translates to, abandon hope, all ye who enter here, but especially humans because they're apparently too stupid to read warning signs. Jake checked his chronometer and winced. Great. Just great. I imagine about as cranky as interdimensional warlords get when random humans stumble into their territory. Interdimensional what now? Before Murphy could elaborate, Jake's proximity alarm started screaming like a toddler who'd dropped their ice cream, the kind of screaming that usually meant either incoming missiles or a very large, very angry something was about to ruin his day. Captain, we have company. And by company, I mean the kind that usually ends with us becoming space dust. Through the viewport, space began to shimmer like heat waves on hot pavement. Jake had seen enough sci-fi movies to know that shimmering space was never good news. It usually meant something big and unfriendly was about to decloak and demand surrender in a language that sounded like gargling gravel. Well, this is just perfect, Jake muttered, taking a long sip of his coffee. I'm already late, I'm lost, and now I'm probably about to be vaporized by some alien with anger management issues. If it helps, Captain, statistically speaking, most galactic warlords prefer to capture first and vaporize later. It's more dramatic. That's oddly comforting, Murphy, thanks. Jake leaned back in his pilot's chair, which squeaked in protest. The Lucky Break wasn't exactly a luxury vessel. She was more of a held-together by duct tape and optimism kind of ship. The kind of ship that made suspicious noises when you looked at her wrong and had a hyperspace drive that seemed to think close enough was an acceptable navigation standard. The shimmering intensified, and Jake could make out the outline of something massive. Really massive. The kind of massive that made his little cargo ship look like a mosquito next to a whale. Murphy, on a scale of 1 to we're completely screwed, how bad is this? Captain, we've just moved beyond completely screwed and entered might as well update your will territory. I don't have a will. Then might I suggest adding write a will to your to-do list right after try not to die in the next 5 minutes. Jake finished his coffee and set the mug down. Somehow, impending doom always made his coffee taste better. Maybe it was the adrenaline, or maybe it was the knowledge that it might be his last cup. Either way, he was oddly calm about the whole situation. You know what, Murphy? I bet whoever this is can give us directions to Gamma 7. Silver lining and all that. Captain, your optimism is either inspiring or a sign of severe head trauma. I'm leaning toward head trauma. The shimmering reached critical levels and space seemed to tear itself apart like cheap wrapping paper. What emerged from the dimensional rift was the kind of spaceship that made small children have nightmares and grown adults question their life choices. The vessel was easily 50 times larger than the Lucky Break, black as the void between stars, and covered in enough weapons to turn a small moon into cosmic gravel. Along its hull, glowing red symbols pulsed like an alien heartbeat, and the entire ship radiated the kind of menace usually reserved for tax auditors and dentists. Well, that's impressively terrifying, Jake observed, finishing the last drop of his coffee. Definitely overcompensating for something, though. I mean, who needs that many gun turrets? Captain, that's the Doomhammer Supreme. It belongs to Overlord Krexthul, Terror of the Outer Rim, Destroyer of Worlds, crusher of hope, and winner of 3 consecutive Most Intimidating Ship Design Awards. Bit of a try-hard with the titles, isn't he? Before Murphy could respond, every screen on the Lucky Break flickered and went dark. Then, with a dramatic flourish that would have made Shakespeare weep with envy, a hologram materialized in Jake's cockpit. The figure that appeared was 8 feet tall, covered in dark scales that seemed to absorb light, and possessed 6 arms that looked capable of crushing steel. His head was reptilian, with glowing red eyes and teeth that could probably double as can openers. He wore armor that looked like it had been forged in the fires of a dying star and polished with the tears of his enemies. "Behold, insignificant mortal!" The creature roared, his voice echoing through the ship's speakers with enough bass to rattle Jake's teeth. "I am Overlord Krexthul, the shadow that devours light, the storm that breaks the brave, the—" "Excuse me," Jake interrupted, raising his hand like a student in class. "Sorry to cut you off there, Mr. Krexthul? Did I pronounce that right?" The Overlord's dramatic pose faltered slightly. It's Lord Krexthul, actually, and you interrupted my introduction." "Yeah, sorry about that. It's just that you seem like you might know your way around this sector. I'm looking for Space Station Gamma 7. I've got a pizza delivery, and I'm already 3 hours late. The miners are probably furious." Krexthul stared at Jake for a long moment, his glowing red eyes blinking in confusion. Did you just ask me for directions?" "Well, yeah. I mean, you've clearly been around here for a while. What with all the dramatic ship hiding and universe threatening. You must know the local space lanes." Behind Krexthul, Jake could see another figure step into the hologram's range. This one was smaller, more humanoid, with blue-tinged skin and the expression of someone who'd been dealing with this nonsense for far too long. "My lord," the figure whispered urgently. "He's asking for directions." "I can hear him, Vix," Krexthul hissed back. "I'm not deaf. It's just that no one's usually they're begging for mercy by now." Krexthul cleared his throat and puffed out his chest, trying to regain his intimidating presence. "Silence. You dare to ignore my magnificence, human? I have conquered 17 star systems. Entire civilizations tremble at the mention of my name. Warrior races flee before my mighty fleet." "That's really impressive." Jake nodded appreciatively. 17 systems, wow. That's got to be a nightmare for the paperwork, right? I can barely manage the shipping manifest for 1 cargo run. "Paperwork?" Krexthul's voice cracked slightly. "Oh yeah, the administrative side of Conquest must be brutal. Tax codes, infrastructure maintenance, healthcare systems for 17 different species. Do you use a standardized currency, or do you have to deal with exchange rates? Because let me tell you, exchange rates are a real pain in the—" "Enough!" Krexthul roared, though his heart didn't seem entirely in it. "You will kneel before my might, or you will be destroyed. These are your only options." Jake scratched his head thoughtfully. "Could I get a third option? Like maybe just the directions to Gamma 7? I promise I'll kneel later if it's really that important to you. But right now I've got some very hangry Venusian miners waiting for their dinner." Commander Vix leaned over to whisper in Krexthul's ear. "Sir, I think he might be broken." "Well, he should be terrified by now. Most species at least try to surrender at this point." Krexthul studied Jake with growing bewilderment. "Human, do you not understand the gravity of your situation?" "Oh, I understand gravity just fine. It's what keeps my coffee in the cup. Though speaking of gravity, your ship's artificial gravity field is really well calibrated. Very smooth. Who's your tech supplier?" Overlord Krexthul decided to try a different approach. With theatrical flair that would have impressed a Broadway director, he gestured with all 6 arms, creating what his intimidation manual called the web of inevitable doom. "Behold," he boomed, "the ancient ritual of submission. Witness the sacred pose that has brought countless warriors to their knees." Jake tilted his head, studying Krexthul's position. The Overlord had arranged himself in what looked like a cross between a yoga pose and someone trying to change a light bulb while juggling. "Oh, wow, that's actually really good for your flexibility," Jake said admiringly. "Is that like alien Pilates? I should probably stretch more. All this sitting in the pilot's chair is murder on my lower back. Krexthul held the pose, his arms trembling slightly. This is not Pilates. This is the sacred. You know, you might want to bend your left knee a bit more. You're going to pull something if you're not careful. Trust me. I learned that the hard way during my short-lived yoga phase. I am not doing yoga. Murphy, Jake said conversationally, make a note to look into some stretching exercises when we get to Gamma 7. Already on it, Captain. I found a lovely 17-hour documentary series called Flexibility Through the Ages that I'm sure you'll absolutely hate. Commander Vix stepped forward, her blue face showing what might have been sympathy. My lord, perhaps we should try the war cry of dominance. Krexthul straightened up, grateful for the suggestion. He drew himself to his full 8-foot height, spread all 6 arms wide, and released what was supposed to be the most terrifying sound in the known galaxy. Kraaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaaa The sound echoed through the ship's comm system, a deep, guttural roar that had allegedly made entire fleets surrender without firing a shot. Jake listened politely, then reached into his jacket pocket. Oh man, that sounds terrible. Here, try these. He held up a small package. Honey lemon cough drops. They're great for throat irritation. Throat irritation? Krexthul's voice was slightly hoarse now. Yeah, you've definitely got some congestion going on there. Maybe a bit of acid reflux, too, from the sound of it. Do you drink a lot of coffee? Because that can really mess with your vocal cords. That wasn't, I don't have acid reflux. That was the war cry of dominance. If you say so, but you should really see a doctor about that cough. There are some great specialists on Gamma 7, actually. Dr. Hendricks is fantastic with throat problems. Fixed up a Centauri trader who sounded just like you. Murphy's voice crackled with digital amusement. Captain, I'm detecting elevated stress hormones in the Overlord system. His intimidation protocols appear to be failing spectacularly. That's probably the throat thing, Jake said helpfully. Hard to feel intimidating when you sound like you've been gargling gravel. Krexthul looked desperately at Commander Vix. This isn't working. No, sir, it really isn't. He's either the bravest human in the galaxy or the most oblivious. I'm going with oblivious, Krexthul muttered. I can hear you guys, Jake pointed out. Your hologram's audio is still on. Also, I vote for oblivious too. I once got lost in my own cargo hold for 3 hours. Krexthul tried one more approach. He activated his armor's intimidation mode, causing it to glow with menacing red light while emitting a low, threatening hum. This armor has been blessed by the dark gods of war, he announced. It is impervious to all weapons. Countless heroes have fallen before its might. Jake squinted at the glowing armor. Huh. Is that decorative or does it actually do anything functional? Decorative? Krexthul sputtered. This is ancient battle armor forged in the... It's just that it looks kind of like the light-up costume my nephew wore for Halloween last year. He was a robot. Very cute, actually. Had little LED strips and everything. Murphy chimed in cheerfully. Preliminary scans indicate a 73% probability that the armor's primary function is ceremonial rather than protective, Captain. Don't scan my armor. Oh, that's totally decorative then. Jake nodded. No worries, it looks very impressive. Really sells the whole Dark Overlord vibe you've got going. Krexthul slumped slightly, his glowing armor making him look less like a terrifying warlord and more like a very tall, very frustrated Christmas decoration. Commander Vix, he said quietly. I think we may have encountered our first human. Yes, sir. They're different from the files. The files did not adequately prepare me for this level of... He searched for the right word. Density, sir. I was going for cheerful obliviousness, but density works too. Growing increasingly desperate, Overlord Krexthul decided to try a more direct approach. Human! You will board my vessel immediately and submit to interrogation. Oh, sure thing, Jake said, already standing up. I could use the exercise anyway. Plus, maybe someone on your ship knows where Gamma 7 is. 20 minutes later, Jake found himself wandering through the corridors of the Doomhammer Supreme, escorted by two very confused alien guards who weren't quite sure what to do with a prisoner who kept complimenting their interior design choices. "I really love what you've done with the lighting," Jake was saying as they walked. "Very moody. And these walls are fascinating. Is that obsidian? It must be a nightmare to keep clean." The guards, who looked like 7-foot-tall armored beetles, clicked at each other in what Jake assumed was their native language. "Murphy, you getting all this?" Jake asked his comm unit. "Every riveting second, Captain. I'm particularly enjoying your impromptu architecture review. Very enlightening." They passed through several security checkpoints, each one featuring increasingly elaborate scanners and weapon systems. At each stop, Jake would accidentally trigger something by leaning on the wrong panel or asking innocent questions about how things worked. "Oh wow, is this a quantum phase discriminator?" he asked at the third checkpoint, poking at a glowing console. The scanners immediately went haywire, displaying what appeared to be Jake's complete medical history, dietary preferences, and browser search history across multiple screens. "Fascinating," Jake read from one screen. "According to this, I'm 73% human, 25% caffeine, and 2% regret. That seems about right." The guards were frantically trying to shut down the scanners when Jake wandered over to another console. "And this must be your security system. Very sophisticated. Is this button supposed to be flashing red like that?" "Don't touch," one of the guards started to say, but Jake had already pressed it. Immediately, every screen in the corridor lit up with what appeared to be Overlord Krexthal's personal files. Jake found himself reading through ship manifests, personnel records, and what looked suspiciously like a diary. "Day 847 of Conquest," Jake read aloud. "Successfully negotiated new healthcare benefits for the Zorvakian mining colony. They seem very pleased with the dental coverage. Note to self, remember to ask Commander Vix about adding vision care to the package." The guards were now in full panic mode, trying to shut down screens faster than Jake could read them. "Oh, this is interesting," Jake continued. "Day 850. The Altarian Agricultural Collective has requested help with their crop rotation schedules. Who knew Conquest involved so much farming advice? Also need to remember to return Admiral Korath's copy of Romance Among the Stars. It's 3 days overdue." "Stop reading that," came Krexthal's voice over the intercom. Sorry, Jake said, "but this is really fascinating stuff. You're running some kind of agricultural cooperative, aren't you? That's not conquest, that's just really effective government." More screens flickered to life, revealing ship schematics, supply manifests, and what appeared to be thank you letters from various planetary governments. "Thank you, Overlord Krexthal, for your assistance with our educational reform," Jake read from one screen. "The children of Zerion Prime will never forget your generous funding of our new schools." Jake turned to the guards, who had given up trying to shut down the screens and were now just standing there looking defeated. "Guys, I think your boss might be the nicest warlord in galactic history. Look at this stuff. Universal health care, education funding, agricultural assistance. He's not conquering worlds, he's running a charity." The guards clicked at each other again, and Jake was pretty sure one of them was laughing. "Murphy, are you seeing this?" "Oh yes, Captain. I'm also detecting that we've accidentally accessed the ship's main database. Apparently the Doomhammer Supreme is actually registered with the Galactic Tax Authority as a mobile administrative facility. They get a Jake laughed. "A mobile administrative facility, that's brilliant. Way better than calling it a really big helpful government ship." By the time they reached Krexthal's command center, Jake had accidentally triggered 17 different security protocols, accessed the ship's recipe database, and somehow subscribed the entire crew to a newsletter about sustainable farming practices. "Captain Jake Morrison," announced one of the guards as they entered the command center. He has seen everything, my lord." Overlord Krexthal, still in his intimidating armor, turned around slowly. "Define everything." "Well," Jake said cheerfully, "I now know that you're terrified of small spaces. You've read every romance novel in the known galaxy at least twice, and you practice your scary voice in the mirror every morning at 0800 hours. Also, your real name is Kevin, which is adorable. Krexthul's armor powered down with a sad little whimper. My name is not Kevin, Krexthul said weakly. It's Krexthul Kevinthul. The Kevin part is traditional. It's a nice name, Jake said encouragingly. Very approachable. Kevin the Conqueror has a nice ring to it. Commander Vic stepped forward, her blue face showing what might have been relief. Sir, perhaps it's time to explain the situation to our guest. Krexthul slumped into his command chair, which was designed to look threatening but was actually ergonomically perfect and came with built-in lumbar support. You want to know the truth, human? Fine. I'm not really a terrifying warlord. I'm an administrator. The whole Overlord of Darkness thing is an act. Jake blinked. An act? 5 years ago, the Outer Cathera sector was being ravaged by actual warlords, pirates, slavers, the worst scum in the galaxy. 17 peaceful worlds were getting picked apart by anyone with a gun and a bad attitude. Krexthul gestured to the screens around them, which were still displaying various administrative documents and thank you letters. So I put together a coalition. We pooled our resources, built this ship, and I volunteered to be the scary face that would keep the bad guys away. The theory was that if everyone thought there was already a powerful, terrifying overlord controlling the sector, the real monsters would look for easier prey. And it worked? Jake asked. Too well, Commander Vix interjected. The pirates fled. The slavers found other hunting grounds, and suddenly 17 worlds were free to focus on things like education, healthcare, and sustainable agriculture. But now I'm stuck, Krexthul continued. Everyone expects me to be this dark, brooding overlord. I have to maintain the image or the real threats will come back. Jake looked around the command center, taking in all the screens showing happy planets, successful trade agreements, and what appeared to be a very successful literacy program. Kevin, you've accidentally created a utopia. Don't call me Kevin. Sorry, Krexthul. But seriously, this is amazing. You've got 17 worlds working together, sharing resources, taking care of each other. You're not a warlord. You're like the galaxy's best middle manager. I prefer Regional Administrator of Peace and Prosperity, Vic said helpfully. That's much better, Jake agreed. Murphy's voice crackled through the comm system. Captain, I'm detecting multiple ships approaching our position. Large ones. And they don't look friendly. The main screen flickered to life, showing a fleet of sleek, white vessels approaching the Doomhammer Supreme. Their hulls bore the symbol of the Stellar Consortium, a corporate entity known for turning thriving worlds into strip mines. Oh no, Krexthul whispered. They've found us. Who's found you? Jake asked. The Stellar Consortium. They've been trying to get into this sector for years, but they were afraid of the terrifying overlord Krexthul. If they realize I'm just an administrator, they'll strip mine all 17 worlds for their mineral resources, Vix finished grimly. Jake watched the approaching fleet and scratched his head. So let me get this straight. You're pretending to be evil to keep actual evil people away. But now some corporate evil people are here. And if they find out you're not really evil, they'll do evil things to your not evil coalition of worlds? That's surprisingly accurate, Krexthul admitted. And all because you're worried about maintaining your image as a scary overlord? Yes. Jake looked at the screens full of happy planets, successful programs, and thank you letters. Then he looked at the approaching consortium fleet. Then he looked back at Krexthul, who was clearly having what might be the galaxy's first existential crisis experienced by someone in glowing battle armor. Kevin, Jake said slowly, has it ever occurred to you that maybe the truth is scarier than the lie? What do you mean? Jake gestured at all the screens. Look at what you've accomplished. 17 worlds working together, thriving, happy. Do you know how terrifying that is to people like the consortium? They make their money off conflict, misery, and desperation. A successful coalition of worlds that takes care of each other. That's their worst nightmare. Krexthul's glowing red eyes widened. You think we should tell them the truth? I think you should tell everyone the truth, but maybe with better marketing. Better marketing? Jake grinned. Kevin, you're not just an overlord. You're the guy who figured out how to make 17 different species work together so well that they're all prosperous and happy. You're not the terror of the Outer Rim. You're the miracle of the Outer Rim. The consortium fleet was getting closer, and Jake could see smaller ships launching from their carriers. Plus, he added, I bet if you offered them the same deal you gave everyone else, healthcare, education, fair trade agreements, they'd probably take it. Who wants to be the bad guy when you can be the good guy and still make a profit? That's actually not a terrible idea, Vic said thoughtfully. It's a completely insane idea, Crexthol protested. You want me to drop the terrifying Warlord Act and just ask them if they want to join a peaceful alliance? Well, when you put it like that, it sounds kind of crazy, Jake admitted. But crazy's worked out pretty well for me so far. Also, I still need those directions to Gamma 7. Maybe we can kill two birds with one stone here. Jake, displaying the kind of confidence usually reserved for people who have no idea how badly things can go wrong, walked over to the communications console. Mind if I? He asked, gesturing to the transmit button. Crexthol stared at him. You want to talk to the Stellar Consortium fleet that's currently preparing to invade my territory? Our territory, Jake corrected. And yeah, why not? What's the worst that could happen? They could blast us into component atoms, Vix pointed out. Or, Jake said cheerfully, they could join your little utopia club and help make the galaxy a better place. You never know until you ask. Before anyone could stop him, Jake pressed the transmit button. Attention Stellar Consortium fleet. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the cargo vessel Lucky Break. I'm currently aboard the Doomhammer Supreme having a lovely chat with Overlord Crexthol about administrative best practices. Would you folks be interested in joining a conversation about regional cooperation and sustainable profit models? The silence that followed was the kind of silence usually associated with people trying to figure out if they'd heard something correctly. Finally, a crisp corporate voice responded. Captain Morrison, this is Admiral Hayes of the Consortium Fleet. Did you just invite us to a business meeting? Well, yeah. I mean, you're here anyway, and Kevin's got some really impressive economic data about this sector. 17 worlds, all showing consistent growth, full employment, universal health care. The profit margins on voluntary cooperation are apparently much better than traditional conquest models. His name is Kevin. It's Crexthol Kevinthol. Crexthol corrected over the comm, sounding resigned to his fate. The Kevin is traditional. Admiral Hayes, Jake continued. What if I told you that this sector has achieved a 97% satisfaction rating across all member worlds, eliminated poverty-related crime entirely, and maintained a trade surplus for 4 consecutive years? Another pause. I'd say that sounds too good to be true. Kevin, show them the spreadsheets. Crexthol looked at Jake like he'd suggested juggling live grenades, but Vix was already pulling up the economic data on the main screen. Holy crap, came Admiral Hayes' voice a few minutes later. These numbers are incredible. How did you manage this? Turns out, Jake said, when you treat people well and give them opportunities to succeed, they work really hard to keep succeeding. Who knew, right? This is Admiral Hayes to all ships. Stand down from attack positions. Repeat, stand down from attack positions. Crexthol's jaw dropped. They're not attacking? Admiral Hayes, Jake continued, I don't suppose any of you folks know the quickest route to Space Station Gamma 7? I've got a pizza delivery that's now officially 5 hours late, and I'm starting to get worried about the miners. Gamma 7? That's just 2 jumps from here. We can escort you if you'd like. That would be great, thanks. Kevin, you want to ride along? I bet the miners would love to hear about your agricultural programs. 3 hours later, Jake finally delivered his pizza to Space Station Gamma 7. It was cold, the cheese had congealed, and the Venusian miners looked like they were ready to start a small war over the delay. But then Crexthol, still in his dramatic battle armor, stepped into the station's main corridor and offered to upgrade their mining operation with better safety equipment, improved medical facilities, and a retirement plan that included full benefits. The miners forgot all about the cold pizza. So let me get this straight, said Murphy as they prepared to leave Gamma 7. You accidentally discovered a secret utopia, helped its leader overcome his imposter syndrome, convinced a corporate fleet to join a peaceful alliance, and somehow managed to deliver pizza 5 hours late, but still get a good review. Plus directions, Jake added, settling into his pilot's chair. Don't forget the directions. Captain, your ability to stumble backwards into galactic diplomacy is either a superpower or a sign that the universe has a very strange sense of humor. Jake looked out at the viewport where the Doomhammer Supreme and the Consortium fleet were flying in formation, presumably on their way to turn the galaxy into a slightly nicer place to live. You know what, Murphy? Maybe both. But hey, at least we're not lost anymore. Give it time, Captain, give it time. As the Lucky Break prepared for its next jump, Jake couldn't help but smile. Sure, he was still the worst navigator in 3 galaxies, and yes, his ship was still held together with duct tape and hope. But somewhere out there, 17 worlds were thriving. A former corporate raider was learning about sustainable agriculture, and a guy named Kevin was finally comfortable being himself, even if himself happened to be an 8-foot-tall reptilian administrator in glowing battle armor. Murphy, set course for the Centauri sector. I've got a shipment of singing crystals to deliver. Aye, Captain. Try not to accidentally start any more utopian societies on the way. No promises. And with that, the Lucky Break jumped to hyperspace, leaving behind a sector that was just a little bit better than it had been before Jake Morrison had gotten lost in it. Which, when you think about it, might be the most human thing of all.